At the core of Hamas, then, is the total destruction of Israel. The land of Palestine is to be consecrated to future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. And there is only one solution to resolve the conflict, and that is jihad or holy war. Israel must be destroyed because it stands in the way of full implementation of Islamic rule in the Middle East. Welcome to Israel Unveiled. Today, I'd like to share some thoughts about the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza that was brought about by the surprise October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel by Hamas. As this war has continued, it's become evident that there are two victims: the Israelis who were viciously attacked and the Muslims from Gaza who did not support Hamas and the terror that it released. So I'd like to bring some clarity about the entire issue by giving some background on what actually led to all of this. And it does require some understanding of Islam and of Hamas in particular. In the 20th century, there was a resurgence of Islam. In many ways, it was in response to the shift and the changes that had been happening in the world. It was brought about by the end of World War I and the fall of the 400-year-old Islamic Ottoman Turk Empire that covered much of North Africa, the Middle East, and extended even into parts of Europe. And so the Middle East was facing great change, and there was a rise of secularism and Westernism that was acceptable to so many that were in the nations that were being carved out from the defeated Ottoman Empire. The division between the Sunni and the Shia Muslims that would deepen, and it exploded into renewed violence in many parts of the Middle East as extreme brands of Sunni and Shia Islam were battling for religious and political supremacy. And that was a war that had been going on for 1,400 years. Egypt, in particular, was facing significant changes. It was bringing them into the modern world. Capitalism and industrialization under the British influence was taking place, and many Muslims recognized the decline of the influence of the Muslim world that actually been slowly happening over the last few centuries. They interpreted the rise of the West as a result or as a fruit of the lack of the observance of God's law by Muslims. That's God's law as written in the Quran. For them, the only hope to reverse what was happening was a revival within Islam. The social, economic, and political stress set the stage for a man who would bring about that Islamic revival, renewal movement. He was an Egyptian Sunni school teacher named Hassan al-Banna, and he founded the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928. He was committed to reestablishing the supremacy of the Islamic influence, meaning the rebirth of the caliphate. He believed that the problems of the Muslim world were a direct result of Muslims not living the true Islamic life as modeled by Muhammad and the first few generations of Muslims. He was set on cleansing Egypt of all Western influence. The Muslim Brotherhood's creed was and still is today: Allah is our objective, the Quran is our constitution, the Prophet is our leader, Jihad is our way, and death for the sake of Allah, the highest of our aspirations. The growth of the Muslim Brotherhood historically centered in Egypt, but it would eventually spread into 70 countries around the world, and it is one of the oldest and largest Islamic groups, and it's considered the parent organization of Al-Qaeda and Hamas. The United States designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization in 1995, as did Canada in 2002 and Great Britain in 2021. Shortly after the first Intifada, which is an undeclared war, a Sunni Muslim group, Hamas, was founded in 1987 by Gazan Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and West Bank Muslim Sheikh Hassan Yusuf. It was at that time the political arm of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is actually an acronym for Islamic Resistance Movement. The word Hamas also means zeal, enthusiasm, and fanaticism. The strength and the power of Hamas grew in Gaza and also in the West Bank. The goals of Hamas are clearly written in their 1988 Hamas charter, and they've not retreated from a single line, nor have they weakened in its meaning. They've declared that death for the sake of Allah is the path and the loftiest honor. Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. At the core of Hamas, then, is the total destruction of Israel. From the river, the Jordan River, to the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, shall be free of Jews. Interesting enough, that was the same goal of the Nazis in World War II. The mission to destroy Israel is embraced as a sacred calling. For them, it's total victory or nothing. The land of Palestine is to be consecrated to future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. And there is only one solution to resolve the conflict, and that is jihad or holy war. The Hamas charter makes it clear that Israel must be destroyed because it stands in the way of full implementation of Islamic rule in the Middle East. In Islam, once a land is conquered, it remains Islamic land for eternity, and it becomes part of the Waqf, a perpetual trust. Therefore, since they conquered the land, the Muslims did in the 7th century, they believe that Israel belongs to Allah forever. So in their view, the Jews have become the invader of Islamic land. It was this belief that was shared both by Shia and Sunni Muslims that became the basis for mutual cooperation against Israel. So the Hamas of October 7th was set in place 17 years before in 2006. In 1993, in the Oslo Accords that involved the U.S., Israel, and the Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority was designated to have oversight over budgets and the governments in the West Bank, that's Judea and Samaria, and East Jerusalem and Gaza. Their 132-member seat body was to have elections every 4 years. And the first election was in 1996, and the Fatah Party won. But in the second election, In 2006, Hamas won a majority, giving them control over Gaza. Ishan Tharoor, a political columnist, described those events. He wrote, "The whole vote took place in the aftermath of a turbulent series of events, the fiery years of the Second Intifada, the death of longtime Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, and the 2005 Israeli withdrawal of troops and settlers from the Gaza Strip." What was the withdrawal? Well, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon was under great pressure from the West, particularly from the United States, to show that Israel had great willingness to take a serious step in ending the conflict with the Palestinians. So as a first step to initiate movement towards talks, the Sharon government forcibly removed all Israelis from 21 communities where they had established schools, businesses, synagogues, and parks. And in addition to that, they left behind modern, productive greenhouses intact. All of them had been paid for by the Jews, but they left them there, and they were hoping that it would lay a groundwork, a sound basis to bring about some employment and stability to Gaza. Then in 2006, when Hamas won a majority of seats in the Palestinian legislative, and because its strength was in Gaza, they actually won because Fatah at that time was seen as corrupt and not doing enough to further the idea of Palestinian statehood. And at the same time, Hamas was seen as less corrupt because they had a reputation for helping the people by building schools and hospitals and seemingly to work for the people. You see, they presented themselves as the best alternative to Fatah. And the people responded in those 2006 Palestinian elections. The result shocked the region. Hamas captured Gaza in 2007. While Hamas is Sunni, it is supported by Shia Iran, and it's based on that shared hope for the destruction of Israel, the little Satan, and the United States viewed as the big Satan. To assure Fatah control over the West Bank, that's biblical Judea and Samaria, in 2007, Palestinian Prime Minister Abbas and Fatah Party issued a new electoral law which basically allowed him to stay in power all those years. He stretched a 4-year term to 17 years and still counting. But Hamas controlled Gaza, and with it, the flow annually of hundreds of billions of dollars. The international community has sent billions of dollars in aid to Gaza to provide relief for the more than 2 million Palestinians living there. And it was supposed to be used for education and health and community services, construction and employment, with the goal to build a stable infrastructure toward a two-state solution, which was the goal of the Oslo Accords. From 2014 to 2020, the UN, the United Nations agency, spent nearly $4.5 billion in Gaza, and that includes $600 million in the year 2020 alone. That doesn't include the millions of dollars that were made illegally by Hamas through smuggling and the selling of goods that would come into Gaza through Egypt. On the first day of talks between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu in Washington, D.C., the first week of July, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said this: Hamas doesn't build up, Hamas builds down. So where is the money to benefit the Gazans? Well, Shia Muslim Iran has fought a proxy war in Gaza by supplying arms and training, money and technology to Hamas. And at the same time, it's reported there has been a 46.6 unemployment rate in Gaza, and that many Gazans live below the poverty line. Yet 3 of their leaders, their key leaders, don't even live in Gaza. The Hamas leadership leads from fabulous homes in Qatar and Turkey. Ismail Haniyeh, the former prime minister of Hamas government in Gaza, and the present head of the Hamas political bureau, is estimated to be worth $4 to $5 billion. Khaled Mashal, the former head and still active leader in Hamas, is worth $5 billion. And Musa Marzouk, head of Hamas political bureau, is worth $3+ billion. Sadly, accountability of the flow of monies continues to be practically non-existent. And that is what has allowed Hamas to build some 500 miles of tunnels underground, some beginning in Egypt, and that are large enough to drive a vehicle in, to build an arsenal of thousands of rockets and missiles, arm and train 40,000 Hamas terrorist militants to attack by land and by sea. So what was always the thing that drives Hamas? It is to see the total destruction of Israel and ultimately of the United States. We're seeing in real time unfolding this ideology that drives Hamas. They'll only be settled and satisfied with total destruction of Israel. You know, we hear it across colleges and universities here and really all over the globe, from the river to the sea. It's the first step to what is the ultimate goal, the Muslim liberation of the world and of Europe in particular after the United States, of reestablishing the great caliphate once again, like Muhammad, like the Muslim Crusaders, like the Ottoman Empire. So caught in the middle of this violence and complete allegiance to Hamas are the people of Israel and those Muslims in Gaza who didn't support Hamas, who wanted to live in peace with their neighbors. As long as Hamas exists, so too will its goal live on. Remember what Ghazi Hamad, a top official in the political bureau of Hamas, this is what he said, and I saw this on television, a report. It was on NBC, October 24th, 2024. He confidently stated that Hamas would repeat the October 7th massacre time and again, 1 million times if we need to, until we end the occupation. So that's where we are, July 2025. Will peace come to Gaza? Former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Danny Ayalon, said it best. He said, "Speak of peace with all who embrace peace and speak truth about those who do not. We will identify evil for what it is and expose it." So we need to pray. We need to pray for the Muslims in Gaza who truly want peace and who are caught in the middle of this war. We need to pray for the people of Israel who have suffered so much, that healing might come to them. And finally, for the total dismantling of Hamas. I hope you have found this podcast enlightening, we can't be ignorant of the times in which we're living. And to see more podcasts about Israel that are posted each week, I hope you'll subscribe. And if you appreciated this particular podcast, that you would click like and share. Be blessed and shalom.